All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Raul Cepeda Jr. On behalf of Barcodes Inc. and Vertical Systems, I'd like to thank you all for attending our webinar today on taking the complexity out of implementing RFID solutions. We know your time's precious, and we hope you gain some valuable insights today into the solution that we're going to be going over. We do have a Q&A feature available on this webinar, so please feel free to send us any questions along the way, and we'll address them towards the end as time allows. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Greg Howman from Vertical Systems. So Greg, please take over.
Thanks, Raul. And thanks everybody for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We really do have quite a bit to cover. I understand going into this that there might be a large discrepancy on RFID knowledge. Some of you may have existing RFID solutions in place. That's great. I think you can still gain some knowledge from this. Others might be thinking about implementing new solutions or are new to the technology. I'll still cover some of the basics for you as well. So with that, I'm going to get started. I'm going to start with some introductions, talk about why you should be considering RFID. There's several good reasons. I'll give you a glimpse as to how others are implementing RFID, what we've seen here specifically at Vertical Systems and through Rapid RFID. Then we're going to talk about getting started. How can we help you get started? How can Barcodes Group and Vertical Systems, get you going with RFID solutions? And then I'll provide an introduction to our Rapid RFID Middleware. And like Raul said, we're going to save some time for question and answers at the end. So first of all, who is Vertical Systems? You probably haven't heard of us. We're a fairly small company out of the Minneapolis area. We've been around since 1982, so 38 years in service, and we've got thousands of successful software solutions out there in the market. I am the president of software solutions at Vertical Systems. I've been with the organization 22 years now, very involved in all aspects of software delivery, and would be engaged with you through any implementation. A little bit more background. Historically, we've developed a large number of mobile applications, so a lot of that's being Android based now. But we typically just build software for the types of hardware that the Barcodes Group sells. So whether it's label printing, barcodes, or RFID, we build and integrate systems into a lot of different types of solutions that you might already have in place. So with that, I'm not going to waste much more time talking about Vertical Systems. I want to jump into RFID and realistically why you should be considering RFID as that first topic. It goes without saying that the RFID technology, it's really becoming more stable. There's a lot more global standards around it, and it's just growing fast. In 2019, there were 17 billion UHF RFID tags sold. It's approximate. And in general, the industry is growing. The compound annual growth rate is 20%, and it's really just starting to touch the different markets. But why you should be considering RFID as a business, is laid out here on the screen. Reducing labor costs, improving efficiencies, solving some unique business problems, even increased social distancing. With the pandemic, that's becoming an increased need. But really, it's all about product visibility. So how does RFID help you do that? Well, it helps minimize human interaction. So there's less data entry, fewer barcode reads, so you're not having to scan every single barcode. It's just faster to read multiple items as they're going through a portal or through an area, because you can read all the tags at once with RFID technology. Point out that barcodes and labels, they might become unreadable in harsh environments, whereas the RFID tag, continues to work in those different environments. That the chip underneath the covers, you don't have to have line of sight to identify what that is. You can still read those tags. And ultimately, that just helps for that better management of inventory or tracking of the progress of your goods. So how are your peers implementing RFID? I'm going to talk through some specific rapid RFID use cases and kind of dive into a little bit of specifics on each, hoping to cover a lot of different areas here with the different ones I'm sharing. The first one is a pretty large implementation that we did for a medical device manufacturer. And they like probably a lot of you, wanted to just increase the throughput and automate the labeling process. But they were also having a problem with the gray market, right? So if you don't know what that is they were seeing products being sold below the minimum advertised price, and they needed to figure out who was doing it. So they were, needed to track down the resellers and figure out what was going on. So ultimately, if you know exactly what's going out the door, you have an RFID tag embedded within that product, you can buy it back from the gray market, read that tag, and figure out which reseller needs to be slapped on the rest. So what we did for them, it's a pretty busy slide here, but it's really kind of a lot to the solution. But as I go left to right, it's really going down a conveyor, and it's kind of workflow automation on a conveyor for label printing using RFID technology as a tool. So the first thing they do, they'd finish manufacturing a product, they'd put it through its tests, and then they'd let us know when that product was complete. Initially, that was done through just a database interface, but in the end, we built a RESTful web API for them to pass that data into us. So then we could encode the tag with information, serial number, lot number, some specific information about that. And in that case, we then turn on a little light to say, yep, it's been done. Stack light, it turned green, so I can move that down and put it in the box and move it down for product labeling. So further downstream, the next line there is the product labeling. We'd read that RFID tag and use that to identify what product it was and print and apply a label, working with our partner in that case. And then later they'd build the cases. So they'd take 3 of these products and put it into a larger carton or a case. And we'd know exactly which one went on there because they'd wave it in front of the, without much extra effort, just put it right in front of an antenna as they're putting it into the case. And once we got 3 of them, or however many go in that case for that specific product, we would trigger another label print and apply that we'd be sent through a bartender labeling solution. We do interface with a lot of different labeling software, whether it's bartender, CodeSoft, or we just do ZPL ourselves. We've done a lot of different things, even Loftware. But in this case, we printed out a label through bartender. And then later on, you want to know exactly what went out the door. So we read all of the tags as it's being pallet wrapped and tied that in with a specific order. So just show you a quick snippet of a screenshot of our application in this. Over on the right-hand side, it shows the 1 of 3 tags scanned. So this is where they're making the case. And then you're waiting for the next one. Once they put the second one in, it would show up here, and then it would print out the label. The next one I'm going to talk about is a little bit around a Walmart initiative. So Walmart requires a lot of different apparel and accessories to be RFID tagged with a GS1 RFID serialized RFID tag, and it has to be verified before it arrives at the door. So in this case, they wanted to ensure that the proper number of products were in each case and that they were properly tagged according to the GS1 standard. So what we delivered was a very cost-effective means, and this involves both our fixed reader solution, Rapid RFID, and Rapid RFID Mobile to do some manual verification. But we started with a standalone system for them. So they just enter the case quantity. What am I expecting to be in there? They build their cases, and then as it goes down the conveyor, it hits a photo. I promise all my examples aren't conveyor based, but this is another one. Hits a photo eye. We read all of the tags and know exactly what was in that box. Verifying the contents and verifying the quality of the GS1 RFID tags. And then we just trigger a GPO. Each one of these RFID readers had digital inputs and outputs, so we could then send an output saying to accept it or reject it. If it was rejected, then they'd use a mobile device to actually verify everything. The next usage is a very common one, probably the most common. You want to have some sort of automated inventory tracking, some sort of traceability, see where your inventory is in your facility. The problem, you're lacking the visibility. This particular one that I'm going to talk about was a customer that really didn't have the manpower to implement a full WMS. So they didn't want to have to scan barcodes as things moved from point A to point B. and they just kind of needed to know general area. So they were trying to track things, as it went through different areas of the building. Did it go upstairs? Did it go into a warehouse? Did it go into an office area? And trying to figure out that information. I will point out that this same type of solution, we've used it for voting equipment, we've used it for garments, we've used it for a lot of different types of widgets, but this is a very common approach. So, what we've delivered here is, when something comes in the door, you associate it with an RFID tag, and then you just start getting that RFID tag movement. We see as it goes in from one area of the building to the next, or when it's shipped out and goes through the dock doors, like up on the upper left in this example. And then we give them, two different things. One, we give them some basic visibility within our web interface, but also pushing that data into their ERP. So again, that's a very common use case. Some additional use cases I want to talk about briefly. So yard checks, I'm gonna hit on that two different ways. One is we've done yard checks with rail cars, for example. So it's a different type of yard, but then you're going from rail car to rail car, reading that kind of transcore tag and making sure that it's valid. The other one that I want to spend a little bit more time chatting about is the just putting RFID readers on fork trucks. And as it's driving through the yard, it doesn't have to do anything unique. It's just driving through the yard and understanding, picking up the nearby RFID tags, and we know what those are, and we tie it in with a GPS location. So it has a tablet on that fork truck too, and that tablet is not only used to kind of get the GPS coordinates, but it gives, in some cases, we'll use it to then provide like an e-pick ticket, electronic pick ticket, and say, hey, here's what you should pick. As soon as you select an item, you can show it on a map and show where it was last seen. Pretty powerful means of finding items in the yard. The next one I had on there, truck tracking, really just kind of holding those drivers accountable. But if you put an RFID tag on a truck, and as it goes out of your location A and shows up to location B, we start to have that footprint of when it left and when it got there. And again, you just kind of know, well, why did truck driver A make it 5 times and truck driver B only went 4 times this day? Probably a lot more than that depending on the distance, but we've implemented solutions like that. Tool tracking, another common one, leveraging RFID to quickly check in and check out tools, or you might have it just kind of automated. You want to just see, kind of like I talked about with the widgets, and seeing where those tools are within your environment as they go through different areas or different portals. The last one, social distancing. This is one that probably makes a little bit more sense now, but if you have a conference room or an area of your building where you want to make sure that people aren't congregating, just put it, having an RFID tag reader in there and understanding, when I've got too many, I can send out an alert, or, maybe you can flash a light or do something in there to make sure that they're not, not risking lives through this pandemic, this interesting time that we're in right now. So those are some use cases. Now I want to spend a little time kind of talking about how we can help. I will say that, the main thing here is, I'll go back here, take the complexity out of implementing RFID solutions. I'm not going to pretend that that we have just kind of this out of the box solution that's going to just fit in and solve all your needs, right? There's a lot of different use cases, a lot of unique use cases for RFID. But typically what we want to do is just make it as easy as possible for you to implement that in your environment. So I'm not an expert on every ERP system. I'm not an expert at every existing WMS or homegrown system that you may have, but I can promise you through our years and years of experience that we've integrated with a lot of different solutions, and we're going to make it very simple to get RFID and the knowledge that comes with it about location into your system, or build a system for you. With that, one of the things I want to emphasize is you always want to start simple. Don't try to take it on across, multiple facilities all at the same time. You might have a lot of different products, so just start small. Start with a specific, line or an area of your building, or a specific product that you want to start tracking and prove that it works. Get that biggest ROI, and then you branch out from there. And I'll even go as far as to say, start with a proof of concept or a prototype. And maybe that prototype is with a fixed reader, but maybe it's with the mobile. You're going to tag some products, make sure that it can read those tags on your products in your environment before you try to do everything. And then as you kind of progress, know that Rapid RFID is a full enterprise implementation. It can, it can handle many, many readers, because of how scalable it is. It basically, and I'll probably jumping ahead a little bit here, but it allows us to control, a subset of the readers with a separate application, and then aggregating that data together, passing it on to a database, and then ultimately getting it into whatever backend system you might have. Now, if I just take a quick look at the Rapid RFID Mobile, it is intentionally very simple. And because we know, again, that your use cases might be unique, this will get you going, right? If you want to just read RFID tags and export that data to a spreadsheet, very, very simple to do. Or if you want to, the middle image is actually showing that it's reading tags that are GS1, SG10 encoded. So we can parse that out and say, all right, well, what's the UPC? What's the serial number in addition to that tag number? But I can wave that over a box. I can wave it around a room and collect quick inventory. I can use it, for full inventory across my whole warehouse if I want. But again, you're just exporting that data and then doing something with it, massaging it. A lot of times we'll replace that export, that Excel export, with a sync button, which will then push it up to a website, whether it's SaaS or hosted in your environment, but that's something we do quite regularly. So the Rapid RFID Mobile does work on a variety of devices. So it's showing here a couple different certified handhelds with some of the big players in the industry. So partners like Zebra and Honeywell. So running on a TC55 with an RFID 8500 sled, or the MC3300R, or the Honeywell CT40 with the IH21. So it's just a quick way to start proving that RFID works in your environment. So now if I transition a little bit more to our Rapid RFID Middleware, I want to talk about what an RFID middleware is first, and then tell you a little bit more about our specific software solution. So a middleware, it's that software that resides between the RFID interrogators, the RFID readers, and enterprise software. So at a very high level, it includes the ability to manage that hardware, configure the readers. And when I talk about configuring readers, I'm kind of saying, well, defining the read zone, configuring the antenna power, how you want to handle that, and then aggregating all that tag reads and passing it on to the backend system. So if you didn't have an RFID middleware and you're trying to implement something yourself, you're just going to get tons and tons of tag reads. But what does that mean? So you really have to kind of start trying to identify what the business logic is associated with those tag reads and ignore all the noise that comes with a standard RFID reader. This is probably overkill. I'll touch on this really briefly for some of the newbies here, but maybe that, on the left, I'm showing RFID tags or labels. So those are uniquely encoded. We can help encode, or they're pre-encoded by the tag manufacturer. You've got antennas and then the readers. So the antennas are what actually is picking up the tag. So it broadcasts the signal, gets the tag to wake up and then send a signal back to the antenna. So the reader then controls all that data and passes it into our system. And then ultimately we're broadcasting that back to whatever ERP, WMS, or custom vertical system software that we help you build. Some key features of Rapid RFID, I'll hit on these briefly. It's really simple to prototype. I'll show you this when I look at some of the slides later, but some of the screen captures. But you just enter an IP address and the name of a reader, and then you can start reading tags with it, or encode tags, and then start tying in with GPIO or whatever else you want to do with it. It's scalable, enterprise ready. Talked about that a little bit, but the sky's the limit in terms of how you want to implement the solution. It's got configurable read zones and locations. So when I talk about a read zone, it could be a small area on a conveyor where there's a single antenna just monitoring a small little spot, or it could be multiple readers and multiple antennas together, kind of trying to light up an entire room, and you're more concerned about what's coming or going out of that room versus just that tiny little area. So it works to quickly identify those read zones and configure those. One of the things that I like most about it is that business level events. I've already kind of teed that up a little bit. But as an item enters or exits a room, or maybe it's the first read, as soon as something crosses a photo eye, I just want to know what's right there in front of me. What do I want to do something with? So you don't worry about all the extra reads that are happening, from a distance, from close up, from a distance. So basically you take all of that stuff and you say, all right, well, what's really happening? Well, this item came into my area, or this item went from left to right through a doorway, or right to left through a doorway. And the next item there is the directionality algorithm. So that's something that we've built on top of it to understand, what's happening with the RFID tags as they're going through my environment. The reader health is important. So if for whatever reason that reader goes down, it's unplugged accidentally, we need to make sure it's up and running. So we'll try to reconnect it. We'll try to restart it. But if that doesn't work, we're going to send out an email alert to say, hey, Bob, go check on this. Then digital I/O, make it real easy to integrate with photo eyes, stack lights, conveyors, you name it. There's a lot of different use cases around digital inputs and outputs. We do work with multiple reader types, manufacturers. I'd say the big two that probably both Barcodes Group and Vertical Systems work with are Impinj and Zebra, but there's no reason it works with Alien and others as well, because we're using this lower level reader protocol to interface with the readers. So you're not tied with one specific brand. And then lastly, that's just powerful integration capabilities. I've kind of talked about that a little bit already. So I will point out that this doesn't have to be a Vertical Systems. It's our team or yours. So we use RESTful web APIs. We use SignalR events so we can broadcast these reads out. So you can reads or business level events out. So a software that's interfacing with it can start doing some powerful things, providing some source code, technical documentation, development support. So if you've got that team that a bunch of rock stars, you want to use them instead, we can still help them get started quickly. Last couple slides here, just showing a quick interface. This is showing when you actually add the readers. This is our standard web framework here. I hit the little plus button, I enter in the IP address and the description. We're going to do the rest. We're going to query the reader, figure out what make and model it is, start using the LLRP to connect to it. What antennas are connected to it, GPIs, GPOs. So we just kind of make it real easy to configure. And then you can just, is it alive? Ping it. You can read tags on it and just see right off the bat. You click this button, you're going to see what tags are sitting in front of it. It's that simple. You can encode right from this interface. What do you want to put on it? Serial number, lot number, whatever. You're just encoding the EPC values of that. You can, if you've got a stack light or some sort of general purpose output on it, you can just turn them on, turn them off, and you can see, photo eyes or switches or whatever you want to do to try to trigger something. It doesn't have to. Obviously, it can be always on, reading continuous, but sometimes there's use cases around, stack lights and photo eyes. The last slide I'm going to show here is just kind of a snippet of, that medical device manufacturer. In this case, they had 3 different lines with a lot of different use cases along the way. So this gives them a quick snapshot, shows a heartbeat for each one. It's running. I'm able to do my end of line encoding. I'm doing my labeling. They've got an additional label, and then here when we're boxing them up, putting them in cases, we're reading all those tags. So you can see it's a pretty modern web interface. It's not an outdated system, but it gets us there quickly. So when I talk about getting us there quickly, then I'm going to kind of transition it back over to Raul and talk about the things that Vertical Systems and Barcodes Group together can implement. So Raul, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, so now that you've learned a little bit about Vertical Systems software offering, you might be asking, how does Barcodes fit into everything? Well, as a solution provider, not only for vertical systems, but of a lot of other manufacturers out there, we partner together to provide some design, deploy, and support services that are required to get these solutions implemented and ultimately maintained. So from a design and deployment standpoint, we have a professional services team that can conduct feasibility analyses, on-site surveys, that'll help enable us to design a customized RFID solution for you based on your environment. And then obviously we work together with vertical systems to develop and integrate, an RFID software solution to meet your needs and then alleviate any pain points that you might have in your operation. If you go to the next slide, Greg. And then from a support standpoint, not only do we offer around-the-clock support for all the deployed hardware, we have an experienced technical staff to deliver solutions across multiple operating system platforms. We're also North America's largest supplier of best-in-class RFID and mobility devices from a lot of the industry-leading manufacturers, such as Honeywell, Impinj, Alien, and many others out there. So we're the largest out there in North America. It doesn't end there. After deploying your devices, setting up the implementation for your solution, we can offer post-sale support services like repairs, spare pool management, mobile device management, and other support services. So again, our goal is to partner with with you and your operation to get it up and running, but more importantly, to keep you up and running with some of these future-proof technologies that you saw today. So that's all I have at this point. We're going to open it up for some Q&A before we kind of close things out. We do have a few questions here. So the first one that we have is, do you have an open API to integrate with my CMMS?
So we do have an open API, right? So in terms of configuring readers, getting the reads, getting those business level events, we make it very simple to integrate with the RFID itself. So in terms of what you want to do with that data, you can certainly pull data out, get the read events, and then pull those right into your system. We can also work with you in terms of how we want to feed those in. So if you want us to be able to push that data to your other systems, we can help with that. So I hope that answers the question. We don't, in terms of the different integrations, we'd expose as much as possible to make it as easy as possible for you guys to implement solutions.
Okay. The next question I have here is, can you triangulate a tag inside a building to identify exactly where the product is located?
That's a good question. That's one of those things where it's usually not one technology that is used to triangulate. So if you're talking about real-time locating systems, you can do that with, I guess, expensive routers and Wi-Fi combined with RFID technologies. I am not going to go as far as to say that we can triangulate. I will say that, there's a Impinj X-Array, and Zebra has some offerings to have ceiling mount readers to try to figure things out, but it's got its limitations too. It's a little bit more complex of an integration, but in terms of trying to triangulate from different readers, it's not what you get when you read an RFID tag is you get this RSSI. It's the signal strength indicator. And if that was as accurate as I want it to be, we could do it. We could figure out distance from an RFID antenna, but those come back as kind of a large discrepancy. So we know we're reading something and we try to fine tune those read zones in terms of how close it is to an antenna. But as far as triangulation, I don't have a solution that's going to just do that off the shelf.
All right, the next one is, I may have missed this point, but what is the current range for RFID tags for dock inbound or warehouse use?
So that depends. There's a lot of variability in RFID tags, and I'm not I'm not the tag expert. I am the software expert. I will say that it depends on the antenna size. So the size of the tag has a large part in that. We've certainly seen tags reaching, 20 feet easily. So you're trying to cover a dock door, for example. You put a reader on each, or an antenna on each side. And as you go through, as long as there's not too much shielding around that tag, you're going to be able to cover that pretty well. But there's a lot of variability in that. Some tags, are limited to a couple feet. You go with an active tag where it's broadcasting itself. It's got a little battery in there. They can go, 40, 50 feet. But I'd say typical expectation is, 10 to 15 feet.
Yeah, and we could obviously, we can always have a discussion. We have some RFID experts here at Barcodes Group. So I think, as Greg mentioned, there's different variations of tags out there. It all really depends on the antenna. There's different sizes. So, I think that's better to have kind of a discussion on, how you're looking to implement RFID before we can probably answer that question.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Raul. And I'll just point out one more thing. You mentioned different antennas, like there's linear antennas that shoot a narrower cone that can reach further, but it's a very focused read versus a larger cone, circular antennas that can pick up more nearby.
And then the next question I have here is, what is the typical implementation cycle time for a medium-sized project?
Yeah, medium sized means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So I'll say that I talked about the kind of that Walmart Verify RFID tags. That's a good one. That was a pretty quick implementation. I'd say, from PO to completion, it was, I'll say 6 weeks in that one. That's a rapid RFID fixed reader implementation, also at the mobile. But they were pretty motivated themselves. We can move pretty quick. A lot of times the slowdowns become on the customer side, but that's one example. I'd say average might be 2 to 3 months. If depending on how involved you are and how available your team is to get things done.
Okay. And then the next question, I could probably answer this one. Does Zebra have, or does Zebra TC52 read RFID or only the TC55? So there's a variety of different RFID products from Zebra. There's obviously the handheld as well as the fixed. Some of the most common ones I would say are the MC 3300 series. There's an RFD 2000, which will utilize the TC20. There's an RFD 8500, which supports Android and OS devices. So a lot of different capabilities, different sizes, different form factors. So if you want to start looking, obviously, at some of the hardware offerings, just please reach out to to myself. Raul, contact info is on the screen right now. But we have a variety of different of hardware options out there, just not only just from Zebra, but a bunch of other manufacturers. So I think ultimately the first things first is let's really understand your pain points, get the software piece, and then we can kind of pull in the hardware recommendation. The next question I have, Greg, RFID, does RFID have an expiration date?
So I guess I don't know exactly how to.
Yeah, I'm not sure either by that one.
I would say no, right? So these tags should last, many, many years, especially these passive ones. The active ones with the battery might die. RFID in general the concept doesn't have expiration dates. And these tags are built to last, I'll throw out 15, 20 years. I don't know specifics on it. I guess you'd have to work with the tag manufacturer, but there's no reason they couldn't keep going for a long time.
Yeah, and if you have further questions there, you can again reach out to our team. There's again, it really probably the only thing that's really going to have to be replaced is the actual RFID tags or RFID labels, depending on what we're putting in place for your environment. We can offer all sorts of sizes and dimensions and materials there, but it really probably comes down to the material of how these tags or RFID labels are being created. Okay, I know we're over time here, so I think that answers most of the questions. The only other question I guess that came up here is about pricing. So I don't know, can you share any pricing information with the group? So Greg, I don't know, do you want to talk a little bit about the software and kind of price points that a customer might be looking at there?
Yeah, certainly. Well, again, there's a lot of variability, and the rapid RFID fixed reader solution, it's licensed on a per reader model. So for a 5 reader subscription license, it's $425 a month. Very affordable. We intentionally make it a very affordable solution. There is also kind of a license and an annual maintenance option if you prefer that model versus the subscription model. The mobile application is priced less than $1,000. And then I guess I'll just throw out for kind of full visibility that GS1 Walmart initiative that I was talking about. That was the full solution with the mobile and the fixed reader. Software was less than 20 grand. So, but there are implementations on the other side, right? So there are several 6-figure implementations as well. So it really depends on what your unique needs are.
All right. Well, I think that answers all the questions. So, again, on behalf of Barcodes Inc. and Vertical Systems, I'd like to thank you all for joining our webinar today on taking the complexity out of implementing RFID solutions. If you do have further questions or would like one of our experts to reach out for a free consultation or a demo, please feel free to reach out to your preferred solution provider on the screen, or you can email me directly. My contact information is there as well. So thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.